Good evening. Welcome to International Flavor. You are on Dem Radio. I am Samuel Trapp, and you are listening to International Flavor. Trying something new tonight. The show is pre recorded, so don't call in. If you would like to be heard, you can do it either through text or through joining me uh, on a platform. And this is being it'll be every night from Sunday through Thursday at 9 p.m. Missouri time. And you can log into my channel on YouTube, International Flavor. Now it's new. I do this on my Russian channel all the time, and I have a good number of patrons that show up and listen to that show every night. But I haven't done it in English as of yet. So for those of you who like to just listen to the radio, nothing different. You just continue what you are doing. But if you wish to participate, then you can join in on the 9 o'clock p.m. version, which is live streamed on YouTube at International Flavor, my YouTube channel. And I will get you the link for that so you know, so the exact link, well, how it would be called. And that channel is full of content already because all of my radio shows end up going there as well. And so that's a plus for you to consider listening. And I like to have people added into the stage, and we can show you how to get there. And there's a lot of news to go into today. So there was supposed to be an Easter ceasefire, and Russia declared a truce. Russia declared that there would be no firing as of 6 p.m. Saturday night all the way through Monday. And there is a story in the newspaper about Zelensky accepting that and then not. He didn't um, he didn't accept it apparently because he continued to fire, and there were a good number of uh, first person view drones, FPV drones that were attacked. There's an article I'd like to inform you about and have you join in if you so desire. And I want you to see these type of things for what they are. And I also want to play for you a little bit of the content of what occurred as of the 19th and the 20th on the Easter ceasefire, and that there's a lot of stories going around about it that occurred, didn't occur, and what happened and why. And so it's very important that we listen to some of these so we can. Uh, so about 2 hours ago, um, Zelensky accused Russia of violating the truce. Of course, we knew that was coming, but within hours of the first ceasefire, the announcement of the ceasefire, they didn't make it at all, and it's nonsense what they the charges after that. So they completely ignored them, and so the Ukrainians, of course, ignored them. And so we're going to hear a little bit about that, about what they updated on that ceasefire. Here's just a 4-minute clip for you of what was played, and unbelievable. It truly is unbelievable to me what these I don't know. It's always this way. It is always, Russia had a 30-day ceasefire and they didn't fire upon them. And they didn't go after energy infrastructure. They didn't attack it. And Ukraine continued to attack the energy infrastructure of Russia repeatedly. And now, same exact thing occurs here. And it's the same as always with these guys. And let's let's listen to one here, and we will hear this as it continues forward. So there'll be some words on here in a little bit, but I want to make sure that everyone can hear this as it's being shared on the screen, and I believe that it can. So well, maybe just the words. This one, I clicked on the wrong one. Well, damn it, we're gonna have to push pause on that one and get to the one that has the uh, noise about it. Sorry about that. My first day on this new method of running the program, and I have to figure it out. And where we go from here and make sure we have the right information. There was a military summary, and let us see what this says. So allegedly, there was some sort of a ceasefire, and this was 15 hours ago. But you can also hear about what is going on uh, after
Hello,
this.
my dear
Let's
friends.
hear.
You're in the Military Summary channel. On this video, we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the first hours of the Easter ceasefire that was announced yesterday by the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. I'll remind you that yesterday, during these, let's say, talks and during his meeting with the Valery Gerasimov, the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, the President of the Russian Federation announced the Easter ceasefire. And this announcement took this ceasefire started at 6 p.m. of the 19th of April of 2025. And according to Putin, the ceasefire will be finished by the end of the 20th of April. So tomorrow, by the beginning of the 21st of April of 2025, the Russians will have their full military right to continue their offensive operation, to continue the special military operation. But some sources are saying that there are very high chances that this ceasefire would be extended, prolonged for another day, or probably for another 30 days. So let's wait and see. But obviously, this is very important date and very important situation. At the same time, the Western media published lots of articles during the first.
Well, I'm not sure what happened there and why that stopped playing. Wonder if I'm guilty of that. Um, I think I am, but that's a different tab, and we need to go back to the previous tab. It shouldn't have changed right there. Sorry about that. And we'll go back to where
Hello, my
we
dear
were.
friends. You're in the Military Summary channel. On this video, Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, the President of the Russian Federation announced the Easter ceasefire. And this announcement took this ceasefire started at 6 p.m. of the 19th of April of 2025. And according to Putin, the ceasefire will be finished by the end of the 20th of April. So tomorrow, by the beginning of the 21st of April of 2025, the Russians will have their full military right to continue their offensive operation, to continue the special military operation. But some sources are saying that there are very high chances that this ceasefire would be extended, prolonged for another day, or probably for another 30 days. So let's wait and see. But obviously, this is very important date and very important situation. At the same time, the Western media published lots of articles during the first hours of this Easter ceasefire, and every single article is about the same thing, that Putin managed to get another victory, the diplomatic victory. The real strategy behind Russia's sudden truce announcement. The CNN CNN article. The Easter truce could make Trump pro-Russian, CNN laments. It would likely embolden Trump to frame the conflict in a pro-Moscow way at times. It could also cause complications for Ukraine when it is inevitably accused of violating what Washington might see as a goodwill gesture from Moscow. It would be a logistical nightmare for Ukraine forces if they suddenly and immediately stopped fighting on Putin's order. And other important articles were published by different Western media. Let's discuss them also in details. First of all, we have very interesting article published by the another by the Wall Street Journal. The ceasefire proposal is an easy diplomatic victory for Putin, writes the Wall Street Journal. Analysts say that brief ceasefire proposal is an easy diplomatic victory for Putin, an attempt to stop the US side from breaking off relations and a way to position himself as a leader who wants peace more than anyone else, the article says. Another important statement was made by another. The New York Times report that Russia has shown its openness to peace talks by announcing an Easter truce. According to the New York Times, Putin ordered a halt of hostilities against Ukraine from Saturday night and Sunday, announcing an Easter truce that appears aimed at showing an impatient Trump administration that Russia is open to peace talks, the article says. You know, that's a lot of interesting statements we got during the previous night, but probably the most interesting statements we got from Ukraine. Basically, not even statements, but the absence of any statements, because Putin announced the ceasefire at 6 p.m. of, let's say, Russian Ukrainian time, but Zelensky confirmed the ceasefire just 3 hours later. So most likely the Ukrainians were trying to find a solution how to make Zelensky as a person who win from the situation, as a person who is number one, because after Putin announced ceasefire, he was person number one, and Ukrainians were trying to find how to make Zelensky.
Yeah, but he isn't person number one anymore because it's he hasn't had the ceasefire. The ceasefire didn't occur, and so it's unfortunate but true. There was no ceasefire, but we'll get to that in just a minute. This article or this channel came out before that, but I like how he puts it together, so we're going to continue it.
Person number one, but they haven't managed to find the solution. And there was a very interesting situation when the, let's say, foreign ministers, like foreign minister of like ministers from France, from, let's say, Brussels, start publishing their own statements that Zelensky should accept the ceasefire, otherwise this is going to be his big, let's say, diplomatic failure. And most likely under the pressure of the Western countries, Zelensky accepted ceasefire and made his let's say, own statement. But when talking about Ukrainians, their main statement was about they're planning to control and they're planning to check whether the Russians follow this Easter ceasefire. And Zelensky later reported that the Russians are not following ceasefire on the Kursk and on the Belgorod direction. So basically, the Russians are not following ceasefire on the territory of the Russian Federation. And according to Zelensky, there are still very heavy clashes in the vicinity of the settlements by the name of Aleshnya and in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Garnal. And by the way, during the previous 12 hours, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions. And basically, the Russians took under control the, let's say, Sumy region in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Aleshnya. So all these territories were taken by the Russians. And I'll remind you that yesterday, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village of Aleshnya was also taken by the Russians. So most likely today we're going to see clashes on the territory of the village of Garnal, because the Russian ceasefire doesn't include this territory. The Russian ceasefire concerns just the territory of Ukraine, nothing with this. Another important things during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received even a single Guerrilla strike. So the sky of Ukraine was completely free without any drones. But despite this situation, the Russians, before the beginning of the ceasefire, managed to improve their positions on several directions. So let's discuss these changes in details. First of all, according to different sources, the Russians, before the beginning of the Easter ceasefire.
Well, we don't need any further of that. That's the situations on the ground. I wanted to comment on what is occurring after that and what is shown as a result of the alleged ceasefire, which really did not occur, because immediately after that, here's an article for you, published early this morning, and this was uh, Ukraine has committed over 1,300 Easter truce violations, and Russia was pretty clear about what was going to be covered under this truce. Anything on the area of Ukraine, they were giving people time to, whatever it was, celebrate whatever way they typically would. It's a religious holiday, so apparently that would be. Uh, a quiet reflection, going to church, whatever. But according to Russian sources, the Russian positions were attacked over 1,300 times. And the Russian military is, let's see, in 24 hours since the declaration of the truce. By both sides. Russian President Putin said earlier that the pause in hostilities would be in effect from 6 p.m. Moscow time on Saturday and last until midnight on Monday. That's for us 3 hours from now. For them, 6 hours ago. He instructed the country's military to stay on high alert, be ready to respond to violations or provocations. Vladimir Zelensky answered a few hours later that Kiev's forces will act in a reciprocal way. But the defense ministry said in a statement, Russian defense ministry, on Sunday, that despite the announcement of the Easter truce, Ukrainian forces attempted to assault the positions of Russian military in the areas of the settlements of Sukhaya Balka and Bogatyr in the Donetsk People's Republic overnight. The attacks were repelled. Kiev also used 48 plane-type UAVs against Russian military, including one in Crimea. The Ukrainian units fired 444 times from cannons and mortars at the positions of troops and carried out 900 strikes with quadricopter drones. And there's another article with relation to it. There were 12 artillery attacks, 33 UAV strikes, and 7 munition drops in the border of Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod regions in western Russia, which resulted in civilian casualties and injuries, as well as damage to civilian facilities. In accordance with the order of Vladimir Putin, all Russian military groupings in the area of the special military operation strictly observed the ceasefire regime and remained at previously occupied lines and positions. They didn't move forward, in other words. And they've been moving forward daily if you watch the daily briefings. The Russian Foreign Ministry's ambassador at large overseeing investigation of war crimes by Kiev, Rodion Miroshnik, said earlier in the day that Ukraine used artillery and drones to attack residential areas in several cities and towns in Donetsk and Lugansk, as well as in Kherson. More reports of violations of the Easter ceasefire for Ukraine have also been coming in. During a phone call on March 18th, Putin accepted his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump's proposal to introduce a 30-day pause on targeting energy facilities. We've talked about this plenty of times on International Flavor. Zelensky said at the time that his country would abide by that truce, but they didn't. Not at all. Russian Defense Ministry reported daily violations by Ukraine on energy infrastructure, and that agreement expired last week. So my belief is that this morning, which is now after midnight in Russia, it's Monday in Russia, it's only Sunday night here, I'm recording, that the ceasefire is over. And so they are, at this time, I'm sure, bombing the crap out of them. The breaches of the Easter truce suggest that Kiev is unable to stick to any pause in the fighting, said Miroshnik during appearances on Solovyov Live TV on Sunday. I do not remember a single ceasefire that would be successful and long-term, so I do not yet see any serious grounds to say that Ukraine is capable of abiding by a truce, said the diplomat. Well, I have been saying this forever. I don't think that they're going to. Everything that Europe and Ukraine is trying to do is increase the increase the hostilities so that Europe can get involved and that somehow Zelensky can entice the U.S. into getting involved in World War III. Hopefully, that does not work. I am not for that. Now, there was another article published a little bit later that I want to get into as well. Ukraine, of course, had multiple violations of the Easter truce. Uh, Russian President Putin announced it. We already know about that. Hours later, Vladimir Zelensky. Now, Zelensky said that the ceasefire truce would happen. However, Sunday, Miroshnik said that Kiev violated the Easter truce. Ukrainian forces attacked a suburb of the town of Kremenaya in Lugansk. Sunday morning, the town of Gorlovka in Donetsk was targeted with 455 millimeter shells. And there were attacks on the regional capital of Donetsk in Kherson. Settlements of Aleshki, Golaya Pristan, and Kakhova were hit by drones and mortars after the truce took effect. More reports of violations kept pouring in. Putin accepted, blah, 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 blah. We already know about that. And now they are claiming in Ukraine, of course, that Russia violated all the ceasefires. Now that the what do you call it? Now that the infrastructure ceasefire is officially over, it expired last week, and just happened to coincide with the Easter holiday. And by the way, our Easter this year coincided with the Pravoslavyanskaya Russian Orthodox Church's Easter holiday as well. So both of us were having the same day, and I think that's part of the reason for the ceasefire offer by Moscow. And as our friend and correspondent on Military Summary Channel was saying, that actually made Russia look pretty good, to say that there's going to be a ceasefire from the Russian side, whether Ukrainians take it or not. And then what Zelensky said actually mirrored that. He said, "Yeah, we support that. We're for it." And I think it's a shame that that it didn't work out the way they intended it to. So I don't know. I think they're. I don't think you're ever going to get one. But now let's read about the overall picture on the ceasefire, because now that the time is up, I think Russia has already been positioning troops. Someone was saying that there's over 70,000 troops positioned in the Zaporizhia area that are ready to cross into a different area that they haven't been fighting in. And I think it's going to get far worse pretty quickly after this, and I think it may be kicking off even as we speak, because it's right now 9:30 in Missouri. That means it's basically 6:30 in the morning, or 5:30, depending on where they are in Ukraine area, and I think they're probably going to start a major assault tomorrow, is what I think. But let's hear about this anyway, because this time is up. This actually came out Friday evening. This did. As the front lines in Ukraine settle into a temporary stalemate, attention turns to what the Kremlin will be planning next. With no major offensives underway, all signs point to a spring-summer campaign that would repeat the dynamics of last year. Russia pressing forward on multiple axes, Ukraine trying to hold the line with dwindling resources. But under this familiar pattern, there will be critical shifts in strategy, manpower, and battle technology. That it's going to be far more than a repeat of what occurred last year. I think the Russians are going to be on a rampage. It's worth noting that in Russia and Ukraine, holding or capturing territory isn't the goal. In an attrition war, the primary objective is to wear down the enemy, and I believe that is definitely in the favor of the Russians at this point. Ukraine has always taken these foolish positions on top of that. So what they're doing, so Russia's beating them on the field, and everywhere they go, they're beating them. And in the war of attrition, the Ukrainians, by anyone's estimation, they are losing more men than the Russians are losing. And but they keep taking out these. They're refusing to accept reality, like holding on and like attacking Kursk in the very first place, and then like refusing to leave Kursk when they were getting their asses handed to them. They wouldn't leave, and the same thing is true all up and down the front. And so it's, I don't know. Ukraine isn't acting logically. And I suppose you could argue that they're acting as somebody who doesn't want to lose their territory. But at some point, if you know that the world doesn't have your back, meaning if the U.S. isn't going to send people over there to die, and you're losing a kilometer all the way down the front every day, or at least once a week, you're steadily losing ground, and you're having upwards of 1,000 guys killed every single day on the battlefield. I keep telling you about these stories of watching these Telegram videos. I may even play a couple of them for you today. There's a site that is switched over to YouTube and is starting to translate them into English for you and tell you about the front, and they can actually show you the bodies. Now, if you join me on the evening program, which I'm going to do every evening at 10 o'clock, you can see these videos that I'm going to put up and check out some of those. And you can add your own questions and comments to my stream as it is going live. And so that possibly could work out for you as well. And this will automatically be published up to my International Flavor website, so you have plenty of platforms wherein you can listen to the program. But all of these type of activities where you're taking foolish positions and you're sending men to slaughter all the time from the Ukrainian side is definitely working to the superior force's advantage. And the superior force is Russia. The Russian military has perfected the tactic of surrounding cities on multiple flanks, attacking lines of supply and fire control, and they control the skies, and so they can grind down the Ukrainian forces steadily, even if it takes them a week, even if it takes them a month, and so while they can take these cities. And the armed forces of Ukraine retreating while they still can, because they can see it. They keep calling it, as I tell you, they keep calling it a cauldron, they keep calling it a pot, and they are totally surrounded on three sides, and they're being told to hold those positions, and they're all dying because of it. And they're cutting themselves off and not being allowed to retreat, as we saw in Kursk, where 5,000 guys were surrounded and they escaped by or they were allegedly escaping by tiny small groups crossing dressed in civilian clothes and claiming they were civilians and trying to, retreat to different areas. And there's plenty of reports of that. So instead, they're all digging in and dying, or finally withdrawing in disarray, having high casualties, or worse, surrendering. And then so they surrender, and then there were reports that on Easter Sunday there was a mutual swap of prisoners that took place, 246 on each side. I don't know where that number came from, but that's the number they said were swapped across each line. So the Ukrainian media then dismisses these losses and then claim that the city, whatever city was encircled, had no strategic value. Well, if it had no strategic value, why in the world are you holding it to the death of all of your men? It would be a better strategy to back off smartly, you know you're losing. You can see the repeats. It doesn't take a genius to see the repeat of what is going to happen in whatever city they happen to be in. And it's happened so many times that if you don't know the word cauldron by now, you should, because that's what they're calling it. And all of the former critical cities that are of strategic value are suddenly of no strategic value, and they immediately switch. Uh, I don't know their political statements by saying that, oh, no, that city wasn't as important as they let on, and so we retreated. Yeah, but you retreated after everybody in the city was killed or captured. So, in a war of attrition, Ukraine is going to continue to lose. And by all accounts, they are losing far more. I've seen reports that say it's 10 or 12 to 1 that Ukraine is losing. So the longer this goes on, the worse it is for everybody. But there's a level of worse that is actually higher on the Ukrainian side, of course. In the absence of a better strategy, though, Ukraine is using this hold every piece of ground at all costs and losing all kinds of men, but then calling it success. And so if they back off slowly, apparently that is success, but it's not. So it's just not. The narrative goes that even if they lose the position, they've inflicted enough casualties on Russia in the process. But that's more about politics than about decent military planning. That is not military planning, and you don't care about your men at all. But the reality is, following the failed counteroffensive in 2023, Ukraine was forced into this sort of defense. Um, they're supposed to be rebuilding strength, wearing down the Russians, and launching another counteroffensive this year. I don't see that happening. I don't know where they're going to get enough men to do it. They don't have enough men to fill the ranks of the troops or the units that have no men right now. So it's whoever their military geniuses are. It's pretty sad when I know more than you do. But this is not good. Um, remember me reading to you a couple of weeks ago the 3 years in the trenches article that was pretty interesting and talking about how everything was pro-Ukraine in the beginning, and then everybody was talking about, oh, Ukraine's holding off this superior army and blah blah blah. But there were a lot of topics that Russia didn't come in there to destroy Ukraine or Ukrainians. It came in there to prove a point and to say, look, you got to do something about these horror story atrocities that you're committing against Russian people, Russian speaking people in your own damn country. They were fighting over it for 8 years or longer and watching it happen, and they'd been asked to come in repeatedly several times. And what happened? What happened? Everybody knows what happened, and if you don't admit these things, well, then you're fooling yourself, unfortunately. But Russia has never publicly committed to scoring a knockout punch against these guys, and trying to say that Russia is failing because of that. Russia hasn't been as bloodthirsty as Ukrainians are, and it's I think it's something I don't want to say to admire, but I believe, especially in the beginning, that the Russians were not trying to kill. Now we're going to listen to a couple of things in because this is a good part of this article that I was reviewing, and I might even read excerpts of it instead of summarizing it for you here. But think about this. Here's a part of the article called "Pros and Cons: Who Holds the Advantages." On March 28, during a meeting with submariners in Murmansk, President Putin, for the first time, openly stated that Russia's goal is to squeeze and crush Ukraine. that is, to secure a decisive military victory. I remember listening to that speech, and that's really the first time I've heard him talk about it in that stark of a statement. We'll explore the political ramifications of that statement in a future article. Blah blah. We don't care about that. But could Russia do that during a spring and summer campaign? So, arguments in Ukraine's favor. Let's talk about this. First, Ukraine has managed to hold the line. Despite personnel shortages, the armed forces of Ukraine have prevented major Russian breakthroughs. Now, Russia is churning it out all the way up and down the line. Russia typically needs to concentrate forces at a rate of 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 to make meaningful gain, and progress is slow. One major reason is Ukraine's effective use of drones. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this part because I think Russian drones are extremely uh, effective as well. But they do have a lot of drones on the Ukrainian side and have had some decent success on that end. Combined with substantial surveillance and reconnaissance, drones give an edge to the defending side. This evokes trench warfare during World War II, similar to what that is, where machine guns and artillery made any advance across no man's land costly for the other side. And drone warfare is now all that Ukraine has left, and they actually do a fairly good job on the drones because they're so cheap. Okay. Second, the Russia's campaign is expeditionary. Ukraine has mobilized militarily, economically, and politically. Russia is fighting with all volunteer army. There's no general mobilization. They do every year a mobilization of young men. That's an every year sort of event, but they haven't had another mobilization since the first one, 2022. Everybody else is generally fighting as a volunteer and getting paid well to do it. Let's see. There's been no general mobilization since 2022, and the economy hasn't been fully oriented to a wartime footing. Defense spending has doubled as a share of the GDP, but the fiscal impact is offset by higher revenue from oil exports and a weaker ruble. This approach preserves long-term economic stability, but limits the manpower and resources available on the front lines. Ukraine's strategy is to exhaust these limits and force a negotiated ceasefire, one that doesn't involve more territorial loss or politically unacceptable concessions such as dismantling its army or getting rid of Vladimir Zelensky. Okay, those are the things that are for Ukraine. And frankly, not all that strong. Everything that's against Ukraine begins now. Every military campaign, even a defensive one, requires preparation, planning, logistics, manpower. For Ukraine, that means securing Western aid and the ability to mobilize more troops. As of mid-April, they're receiving neither. The U.S. is sending what's left of the Biden-era assistance, but no new aid package is in sight. Europe is supportive, but they can't match the level of U.S. aid and doesn't appear eager to do so. Manpower is an even larger problem, an even more pressing issue. Armed Forces Ukraine Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi has said Ukraine needs 30,000 new troops each month. I think that number is much higher. I think he's smoking the wacky weed if that's all he says he needs. And by the way, they're claiming Zelensky runs around telling people that in 3 years they've only lost 100,000 troops, which is about 30,000 a year. Why then do they need 30,000 new troops each and every month to sustain current force levels? And their force levels are already below 70%. And so the Russians have killed a ton of them, but they also have a sizable portion of the losses are due to desertion. 500,000, they were saying, have deserted or disappeared, and they can't get to them. And over 100,000 actions, criminal acts, felonies have been alleged against those who are deserting, and the current cases on the docket right now. But this is a reflection of what happens when you have forced conscription, death all up and down the front lines, and low morale. Efforts to lower the draft age have been clumsy. Ukraine tried to entice 18-year-olds with ads comparing their contract pay to how many cheeseburgers that would buy. Of course, how are you going to buy cheeseburgers if you're dead on the front line? Um, Unsurprisingly, the campaign was a big flop. They've had only 500 people sign up voluntarily in 2 months between the ages of 18 and 25, according to a guy named Pavel Palas, who from deputy head of Zelensky's office. All signs suggest that neither Ukraine nor its Western partners are prepared for a 2025 campaign. Some seem to be banking on Donald Trump's vague promise to quickly end the war. But Ukraine, Zelensky isn't for that. He keeps saying, send me some more. There's an article about him asking Germany to send 30% of their current weapons to Ukraine now from Germany. America's not providing stuff and we need more. So, Germany, you send us 30% of your stuff. It's an interesting article. We'll get to it. But even if Russia struggles to replenish its ranks, which, obviously it can't be easy to get people to go there, even though they are paying well, and even though they are winning, the problems on Ukraine's side are far, far worse. By some estimates, frontline Ukrainian units are operating at 40 to 50% capacity. I gave them a 60 to 70%, and Russian forces are closer to 80 to 90% manpower. Ukraine's entire defense strategy is also built around one single pillar: drones. This makes it inherently fragile. If Russia can suppress drone operations, especially with its superior numbers, everything else could unravel. I would also point out that most of the Ukrainian drones are being jammed, are of technology that Russia can jam. Some of these videos you should watch, because you can see some of the videos of these drones trying to attack a Russian unit in a Jeep or a Humvee or similar personnel carrier, a BMP, and it all of a sudden will fall out of the sky because the Russian vehicle has a jammer equipped as a signaling device to jam the radio frequencies, and that disables the drone as it gets near its target. And so then the Russians can smash it and keep on trucking. And the Russians are using these wire-guided drones to great effect. And they're also doing quite well on setting up these drones that are quick front drones. And people are, like I told you a couple of weeks ago, they're starting to be able to mobilize them with the front unit, but control them from the rear, which has been very helpful. So now they don't have to fly these drones from the rear. They can fly them straight from the front line unit. And they're not being controlled by the front line unit. They're just on the front lines because the front line unit has them. And so they just pick up another drone out of the box on the front line, and it connects to whatever server they're connecting to, and off they go. And so they don't have to fly, a mile, 2 miles from someplace else. And the Ukrainians, after they keep retreating, they're in disarray, and so this is all bad news for them. So the Russian military has been quite adaptable, whether executing grinding offenses or digging in for protracted defense. In the Avdiivka campaign, which wrapped up in February, this basically set the tone for 2024. Russians used a mix of flanking attacks, fire control over supply routes, and siege tactics to wear down Ukrainians, all backed by drones, artillery, and guided bombs. All the Fab 500s, the Fab 1500s, the Fab 3000s are hugely effective in any region where the Russian, and they can fly from anywhere. They took all these Soviet era bombs, these dumb bombs, and turned them into smart bombs by putting a glide kit on them, and so now they can direct where they're going, and they're unstoppable. They're not guided by radio signal. they are guided by a course that is already programmed into it, and then they just take off and they go. And they're still a dumb bomb, but they're a directional dumb bomb, and they're a place that can pinpoint, find places to drop, and they're of great effect. And the Russians have still hundreds of thousands of these things. They got the whole Soviet Union stockpile still. Uh, Ukraine has also evolved its defensive tactics, but the Russian breakthrough in Suja in 2025 revealed further progress. For the first time in a long while, Russian forces managed to break Ukrainian lines outright, forcing a chaotic retreat from a heavily fortified positions. And it's getting worse, friends and neighbors. Reports suggest that Russian advantage in drones was pivotal. They fielded overwhelming numbers, located and suppressed Ukrainian FPV drone crews, and cleared the way for an assault. Ukrainian drone units end up running alongside retreating troops, especially in Kursk. If Russia can replicate this success, Suja might become to 2025 what Avdiivka was to 2024, a model that could spell real trouble for Ukraine. Taking everything into account, for the first time since the conflict began, the likelihood of a partial or total collapse of Ukraine's front lines by year's end exceeds 50%. Betting odds, Ukraine's done by the end of the year. It all depends on whether Russia can consistently keep on punching through. They're doing pretty well. So, what does the Russian offensive look like? What might it take view of? Um, we can expect a continuation of last year's strategy, pressure across the entire front to stretch Ukrainian forces, probe for vulnerabilities, and exploit any cracks. Broadly, the front can be divided into 4 sectors, north to south. Now, I disagree. I think there's a fifth, but we're gonna listen to this. So Sumy, which is up in the north of Ukraine, and that's after Kursk. So the Russians have now pushed out of Kursk, pushed the Ukrainians out. They're no longer in Kursk. They've retaken all of Kursk. Last week, I think they had still one small little town that they had to boot everybody out, but that is done. Now they're pushing through into a region called Sumy. And Sumy is south of Kursk region, southwest a little bit. There's Sumy there, and it also bumps up into a place called Kharkov. And Kharkov, so Sumy, Kharkov, they're both along the Russian border underneath Kursk and Belgorod. And so the Ukrainians kept bombing into Belgorod and bombing and they tried to take over Kursk, and that was a failed initiative completely. And so now they're coming into the Sumy region and probably into Kharkov region. The Russians been probing in there and gaining a lot of ground in Sumy itself. Okay, now this creates a problem because if you can continue to push through, and so I'm looking at this map right now, which maybe I'll share it with you so you can see it too. Here, let me show you what that map looks like. Let's see, share this tab, and we shall show it to you here. And so you can see the map right here. So you have Sumy up in the north, you have Kharkov here, and then these blue lines, that represents the rest of the Donbass, the Donetsk area, and Lugansk. So this small place right here represents, this small part is the rest of the Lugansk area. Or no, I can't see the blue lines correctly. So Lugansk, Russia occupies basically 99% of. Donetsk, which goes along here and comes here, the Russians hold about 70 something percent of most of it. Okay. Zaporizhia is down here. And then this, the Russians are still holding these areas in this area. So where are we here? We have Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Okay, we have Kharkov up here, and Sumy is here. well, I don't know. I don't know if you can see that. You can't see me pointing at it. I wish I could draw on the map, but I guess I can't. So you can't see it anyway. But I thought the mouse would show me pointing around in those places, and maybe it does. But so you're about 100% through with where you are in Lugansk. Donetsk is here. So they still have a little bit to go. Still got a little bit to go in Zaporizhia. Still got a little bit to go in Kherson, okay, in order to capture it all. So they're talking about the four sectors that it is divided into. The northern sectors are 1 and 2. The westerns are, well, heading west. It's the eastern sector, but they're heading west is region 3, and they're really heading northwest. And then sector 4, which is heading straight west, and try and take the rest of Zaporizhia. And I think then maybe you got a chance that the war is going to go. But now they've shown these blue lines as far as Kharkov, and they haven't shown them yet as far as Sumy yet on the battlefield maps. But I think if they come and they try to take Sumy, then you're going to see add another year onto this war if they're going to go that way, unless the Russians can find some way to break through. But anyway, let's talk about the rest of the strategy. Um, so in Sumy, with Ukrainians pushed out of the Kursk region, Russia might try to take a major offensive here. At a minimum, this would be to create a buffer zone along that border so they don't come back into Kursk or into Belgrade. There are also rumors of a push toward the city of Sumy, and they've been getting closer. While Russia has made no territorial claims on this region, it's a good pressure point. Volchansk-Kupiansk. This sector is geographically isolated by the Seversky Donetsk River. Russian objectives may include clearing the east bank of the river, taking Lyman, and encircling Kupiansk. A deeper push toward Kharkov from the north via Volchansk is possible. Now, that's another area. That's the one I was showing to you on the map there, which let's show you. Oops, let's show you again, just because it's entertaining. So here it is in the Kharkov region, right in there. And this one is kind of isolated. That's Vovchansk. Okay, so that is where we are in the Vovchansk-Kupiansk area. Donetsk area. This was the primary battlefield in 2024, and most of it is already seized. The key offensive vectors in this area are Konstantinovka and Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk looks promising, and they've been surrounding. They're almost surrounded in there already. They have good logistics. They have plenty coming in from the east. Konstantinovka is encircled already, and so that looks like a good front. And then the last one is the southern front. In March, after the winter battles cooled off, clashes flared near the Dnieper River. This may have been an effort to secure bridgeheads in preparation for an offensive towards Zaporizhia, key city that Russia considers the capital of the Zaporizhia region. It lies 30 kilometers from the front, and Ukraine heavily fortified it last fall. Okay. Now, I also think that there's a good chance that Odessa and Kharkov end up in that group. That's what I think. Odessa and Kharkov, but that's me. So this art author says if he were playing, this is a guy named Sergei Poletayev. He's an just a political commentator and war correspondent. If I were planning the campaign, I'd go in all directions. Force Ukraine to spread its already thin reserves, make it harder to concentrate drones and personnel in key areas. Sounds like a reasonable plan. Russia's goal would be to quick and decisive breakthrough creation, but as always, success of such an operation depends on surprise. If we can guess the direction of the attack, then Russian general staff will have failed. At the same time, we shouldn't underestimate Ukraine. While a strategic counteroffensive is probably out of reach, a surprise maneuver like the incursion into Kursk last April shouldn't be ruled out. Demonstrating military relevance to its Western backers is just as important now as it was then. And they don't care about their men. They will happily throw them into the mix and allow them to continue to die, which I think is unfortunate. Uh, let's see. Where is that article I wanted to share with you about the 30% of, of 30? We want 30% of your arms, please, Germany. That is crazy. Um, Also, there's a couple of horror stories that, frankly, I'm sorry that I have to share with you, but I will, and but we'll get to that in just a minute. Here's the article about the Ukrainian envoy asking for 30% of Germany's military equipment. Berlin must send a warning signal to Russia, says Andrei Melnik. So this article was ridiculous, and it's I hate to laugh at it, but it's a freaking laughable article. Germany should donate 30% of its available armored vehicles and military aircraft to Kiev, according to Andrei Melnik, Ukraine's envoy to the UN. His appeal comes as EU nations seek ways to boost support amid uncertainty over whether Donald Trump will continue backing Ukraine. I don't think he will. I hope he doesn't. Melnik, who served as ambassador to Berlin from 2015 to 2022, addressed his plea in an open letter to the new chancellor, Friedrich Merz, published in Welt am Sonntag, Welt on Saturday. Uh, it is in your hands as peacemakers to stop this damn war by the end of 2025, he wrote. The diplomat outlined a series of steps he believes Merz must take to cut the Gordian knot and force Russian President Putin to make peace. According to Melnik, Germany should donate 30% of its Bundeswehr stock of armored vehicles and aircraft to Kiev, including 45 Eurofighter Typhoon and 30 Tornado fighter jets, 100 Leopard 2 main battle tanks, 115 Puma, and 130 Marder infantry fighting vehicles. He also called on Berlin to defy the expected resistance from the Social Democrat Party and send 150 Taurus cruise missiles. The SPD opposes missile deliveries, citing concerns about further escalation with Russia. The Social Democrats and Merz's Christian Democratic Union are currently engaged in coalition talks. Melnik urged Germany to commit 5%, 0.5% of its GDP, or 21.5 billion annually toward military aid to Ukraine through 2029. These funds should be investigated in the production of state-of-the-art weapons in Germany and Ukraine, he wrote. He also called for the 5.5% benchmark to be adopted across the EU as a huge warning signal to Russia. So basically, this guy's all about World War III. Merz recently expressed openness to delivering Taurus missiles, prompting criticism from SPD leader Matthias Mersch and Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. Meanwhile, Russian ambassador to Germany, Sergei Nechayev, warned that such shipments would bring no changes on the battlefield. Well, I happen to agree with that, but would further implicate Germany in the conflict. Even if you provide those weapons, aside from the aircraft might help a little bit, but they have to take off from Germany or from Poland or somewhere else, because obviously none of the aircraft are able to take off even now from Ukraine. Russians are destroying their battlefield. So I don't know. I'm interested in paying attention to that. Uh, well, but let's go back into this um, other story that I came across that I wanted to inform you on. Get this. Here's what the Ukrainians are fighting for. This is sad. This is unfortunate. Uh, German state media shows Nazi insignia in a Ukrainian boot camp for kids. A broadcast from a secret Ukrainian military camp for children featured a child wearing an Imperial Eagle patch. German state broadcaster Deutsche Welle (DW) has broadcast Nazi insignia in what it claimed was a report from a secret military camp for children in Ukraine. The report about children being trained for war in military style boot camps on Thursday featured children as young as 10 learning to shoot military grade weaponry, provide first aid, and train in hand to hand combat. Ukrainians realize the war may continue for many years and they want to be prepared. Today's children may be tomorrow's soldiers, the channel broadcast. One of the teenagers was wearing a patch with a stylized Nazi Germany's Imperial Eagle, briefly seen in a video on his shoulder. Unlike the original Reichsadler, who carried a Nazi swastika in its claws, the eagle in the patch appears to have replaced it with the trident from the Ukrainian coat of arms. The original Reichsadler with the Nazi swastika falls under the category of unconstitutional organizations symbols in Germany and is displayed outside the context of art or science, research, or teaching. That which makes it illegal. The symbol and its variants has been extremely popular among Ukrainian servicemen, repeatedly making it even to official propaganda materials and then quietly removed after critics spot them. Other controversial symbols, ranging from patches to various SS units, assorted neo-pagan and neo-Nazi symbolism, and outright Nazi swastikas, have been repeatedly spotted on uniforms of Ukrainian servicemen as well. The need to denazify Ukraine is among the goals proclaimed by Moscow and was at the very beginning of the special military operation. As far back as February 22, Kiev has long denied the presence of neo-Nazi elements in the military, as well as broader issues with such ideological ideas around the country, and dismisses any assertion when you talk about this as Russian propaganda. So we're all spouting Russian propaganda. Even the Germans are spouting Russian propaganda. Well, that is unfortunate. It truly is. I want to see, excuse me, what sort of uh, new news has come about since we began the program. Let us see where we are. Oh, you remember me telling you on Friday about the UK, about in England, that saying that there was an actual unanimous ruling on what the definition is of a woman in the UK, and it was in favor of biological women. Well, now there's all kinds of activists out there all over. But before I get to that little tale of woe, I did want to point out that the current state of things here in the United States. I went yesterday to go get a coffee at Starbucks. First, I was going to Sam's Club or something, and so on my way, I figured I'd stop at Starbucks, get a coffee, and so I did. And I was pulling into the Starbucks parking lot, which is on a major corner, two major roads, and there was I don't know, 400 people out there, 300, who knows? Not a huge number of people, but lined up along all four corners of this intersection. Like I said, it was a major intersection. So I'm sitting there in the parking lot in Starbucks trying to figure out what they are protesting. And so they're people carrying so the first sign I noticed said had a the red circle with an arrow or with a line through it means no, no this, no that. Well, behind it was written Trump and Musk. So down with Trump and down with Musk is the first sign that I saw. Saw a sign that said something similar to don't I didn't vote for Elon Musk and stuff like that. Nobody voted for Elon Musk. And we've already JR talks about that topic quite a bit, like who the hell cares how officials get appointed, and how people get hired for the federal government. And I think they kind of snuck one over on Congress and just created this own Doge, and Trump ends up with it. And the Congress didn't get a chance to advise and consent to who's running Doge. They didn't do any of that. Or perhaps I'm incorrect in that, and JR can tell me how that worked out somewhere, but I don't remember that ever being an issue. But so that was the first part of the small little protest I was watching. But I'm sitting there as I'm driving through the drive-through. There were, I don't know, 6, 8 cars in the drive-through, and so I had plenty of time to check out what other signs. And so then I saw across the way somebody holding a Black Lives Matter sign. I was like, what? So are we anti-Trump or are we pro-Black Lives Matter? What in the world is this? Then I saw one that had a Ukraine flag on it. Then I saw a transgender group holding the rainbow flag, and I'm like, "What in the world?" So I got my coffee and I went around. I did a figure eight around the place to see what kind of signs I could check out. And these people are nuts. I don't know what they were protesting. I can't tell you. I mean, there's so many topics. Yeah, I just would call it, chalk it up to, we're against everything. so so hell with you. We're against everything, and we're just gonna uh, come out against. Another story. This I was showing a house, a brand new house this morning to a guy who was looking to buy a house, and I hadn't met him before, and so he's it's a brand new home. We're walking through, and he's looking for an additional rental home to buy from somebody, and and this was a brand new, well built home. And so we were together maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour tops, and we were looking at this, and I don't talk politics when showing property. I mean, what the hell's that all about? I don't do any of that. And this guy obviously was, interested in talking about some of that. I'm trying to give him the particulars on this house, and I'm not so sure he's going to do anything anyway. And he he starts talking about Trump and how horrible Trump is for the world, and I just let him go on. I said, well, I stay out of that kind of thing. I don't generally get into that, and frankly, anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a total pro-Trumper. I'm more for than against, and I always say I'm 70 to 80% behind what he's doing. Not so sure I agree with tariffs. I don't agree with him I don't agree with him reinstating giving aid to Ukraine. I also think that he probably had to do that because that money was already locked in under the prior administration, and you can't really hard for him to take it away, and it could have been caused him more problems than good. But I hope there's no new effort to continue to give them money, although I know there's all kinds of people that are probably trying to continue to force that issue. and it's horse trading for him too. He's making deals, and so. But this guy was extremely anti-Trump, and he kept talking. By the time we were done, I'm not so sure that guy's gonna want to use me to help him get a house. But I didn't say anything negative. I didn't say. I just kept going, nah, nah, But I think he wanted somebody. I think by not agreeing with him and beating up on Trump, that I suddenly became, and this is unfortunately true in a lot of respects. If you don't come out and condemn Republicans, condemn Musk, condemn Trump, you are the enemy. You're supposed to virtue signal and hate them all. You are supposed to dress right, jump in line, and support whatever crazy agenda the Democrats want you to support, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's trans, gay, abortion, picket, name it. You're supposed to hate anything. You're supposed to. Uh, you're supposed to. I don't know what. You're supposed to be subservient to some racist. If you don't come out and say that there's white privilege, you are a racist. If you don't come out and say that what Trump and Musk is doing is evil, then you're a Trump lover. If you don't come out in favor of Ukraine, you are a Putin puppet. If you don't come out for some guy sent back to El Salvador, then you're a racist. And by the way, I saw some signs about that guy with these people. It was pretty funny because in the Russian version of my show that I was given this morning, had people asking me, in the commentary, were saying things like, because I had shown a couple of videos. I took a video in Russian of the protesters, and I was like, I'm not sure what they're protesting, but it's pretty damn comical because who they are. And people were like, they were surprised at how old everyone is. It is not the realm of the young for protesting. These people were, 50s, 60s, some even in their 70s. There were a lot of old couples cruising around out there. And they were very curious on the Russian side of the world to know whether or not these people were being paid. Well, I don't know. But I always thought it would be interesting to try to figure out how to get paid. I suppose it would have been very interesting to find out how long they stood there with their thumbs up their butts, carrying around these signs all over the place: transgender flags, Black Lives Matter flags, hate Donald and hate Elon flags, support some guy exported to El Salvador. All of these things, they were against everything. Yes, and it would be interesting to find out whether you could get paid. We ought to do an investigation into how. Because if you want to pay me to go protest, I'll go hang out there and carry a sign. You know what I should do? I thought about this. I thought about going and getting a bunch of business cards and wandering around passing them out to people saying, hey, I sell real estate in your area. I'd like to get some customers because there's never enough to go around. And it's hard to come. Nobody's buying anymore. That's not true. People are buying, but it's a different market than it was even a year ago, right? And it's anyway, kind of funny. So if someone's going to pay you, I want to know how much they're going to pay me and how long I got to stand there. Is this an 8-hour shift? Am I getting paid decent money, or am I going to be making $10 an hour? Screw that. You want to pay me? I don't know. I suppose I'm sitting there going, what would be my minimum to go out and stand in 100-degree Florida heat and carry a sign, or worse, I suppose I'd have to say what the sign would say. Maybe I could carry a gay pride flag, but that would cost you because I don't want to be associated with that. I suppose I could carry around I hate Elon and Trump, but I don't, but it doesn't matter. I'm just a guy carrying a sign if you're going to pay me some money for that. But I probably wouldn't carry that sign either. supporting a deported El Salvadoran. I don't know. I probably wouldn't carry that one either. Um, Boy, there aren't any of those that I would truly feel comfortable carting around protesting. But maybe I could get paid to protest and then go out and pass out business cards or go out and have a sandwich board on there that says, uh, call Samuel Trapp for uh, Realty One Group. Do that and see sell a house. I'm looking at those people as customers, but I doubt that if you got enough time to hang out there, you obviously got enough money to buy a house. You're making pretty good money from somewhere if you got enough time to waste your day doing that. And you wonder how committed they are. I thought about being a man on the street and actually doing some real artistic journalism, but that didn't pan out. And well, there you have it. Let's see. I had another article that I found rather interesting. Western Europe is predisposed to tyranny and global conflict, according to Moscow's Foreign Intelligence Service. How about this? There was also another one that a Trump plans a new trip for his envoy to Russia. And what else? A place where I get a good amount of my news from is called RT, Russia Today. And I give you the opposing points of view of Russia Today. I read some TASS news agency, which are both Russian. I like to read some Al Jazeera. And there's there's a couple of Indian channels that I like to troll for news. But this one I've followed quite a bit. I've told you that the U.S. has been charging people with crimes. This is nonsense. People that work for RT Media, they've been charging them with crimes, conspiracy, so they could take away their houses. They could do some confiscation of these properties. So there was an article that came out here. When did this one come out? This came out yesterday on the 19th. And it basically, RT, Russia Today, has become pretty successful, according to an Iranian minister, of countering the West's news monopoly. Well, the West's news monopoly has been lying to us for years. So people are looking to fill that void with some reasonable voice from somewhere. And a lot of the things that I share with you are pretty reasonable. Well, they're being filled by a good number of Indian channels. They're being filled by Al Jazeera. And for most Americans, oh, geez, I listen to Al Jazeera. Why? Because they don't like the name. But what these other stations are doing is they're continuing to change the narrative of what everyone must hear on the United States side. You have to hear only the BS from the presidential briefing room by the big three, CBS, NBC, CNN, those guys, well, Fox as well. But the bigger liars are in the legacy, they call them legacy media. I call them the legacy media. It's nonsense. But Iranian foreign minister Abbas Araghchi had some warm words to say about RT in an exclusive interview. He stressed the network's effectiveness in countering attempts by the West to control global news. During conversation on Saturday, he congratulated RT on its 20th anniversary. This channel was started, by the way, by Margarita Simonyan. Not started, but she's the president, one of its founders. It began broadcasting out of Moscow on December 10, 2005. I've been listening to it since about 2009, 2010. I am a fan of this network. I usually follow its news, its analysis, and programs. He said, I'm a fan as well. So there you have it. The top diplomat explained that, unfortunately, the current world is under the influence of West, mainly American, media that publish world news from just one perspective, their own. Of course, with complex methods and because of their reach, they try to control public opinion in the world. RT's efforts to create a news space and a new information channel have been very valuable and useful. It seems to have been an effective effort to counter the news monopoly in the West, and I hope that it will continue on this path, and I wish you success. Uh, Last September, the outgoing administration of President Joe Biden announced a new raft of sanctions targeting several Russian media outlets, accusing them of attempts to undermine democracy and interfere in U.S. elections. Then, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken alleged that RT was functioning as a de facto arm of Russian intelligence services. Moscow condemned these restrictions, alleging that Washington had declared a war on freedom of speech. I happen to agree with that, as many people do. Uh, the war on freedom of speech. The curbs on RT remain in place despite continuing discussions between the Russian government and administration of U.S. President Donald Trump aimed at normalizing relationships between the two countries. Isn't that loony? Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this. This is my first effort at it. I'm going to encourage you because every night at 9 o'clock Missouri time, Sunday through Thursday, I am going to do my channel, do a show. It'll be on video. You can log in on YouTube. And the way to get on my YouTube channel is to find Samuel Trapp. You can view my channel. It's called type in the following. It's called International Flavor Dash English. And I don't have a ton of subscribers on there because I've mainly done everything in Russian. But all of my shows show up here on like a podcast list as well. And so, well, most of them sometimes are a little bit late, but they do show up there. And so you have the ones from last week are all there, and you can log in and listen to these videos. Well, now it's going to be somewhat in reverse because I will be live, and you can see these if you log into my channel at International Flavor Dash English. So log on to YouTube or do a search in the thing called at International Flavor, one word, International Flavor Dash English, and check it out and log in right there. And then when you see a live notification, if you become a channel member, you'll get a live notification when I go live or when there is new content out there. And this content here, you can click on the showing the live stream. It I don't know if that's showing up on the screen. I don't think it is, but you can uh, log in, get notifications, and you'll be able to ask questions live on the screen, which could be a lot of fun. And so I hope you do that, and I hope I get people to join in because I wish to change the way uh, that this program is run. And at some point, I think I'm going to ask JR, or I'm considering swapping my Monday through Thursday, or I'm sorry, Monday through Friday program to Sunday through Thursday and figure out how to do these channels simultaneously. So a video broadcast that is also being broadcast live on Damn Radio. And I think I have that figured out. But I want to go 2 weeks like this. I haven't even brought the idea up to JR yet. and to see what he thinks about it. But the time would be more convenient for me at 9 p.m. Missouri to do this, and people can log in, and you can join me on video as a platform. You can join in and be, instead of a call in, you could video in or call in, and you'll be able to do both in the way that I believe I have it set up to do. I'm going to experiment this first week. I'm just going to do the show every night, and we're going to have it live at night. You'll find out about this show, which I'm recording Sunday night. You'll find out about it Monday afternoon on damradio.com. And then tonight, I invite you, since when the show is being played, it's already Monday. I invite you to join me tonight at 9 p.m. Missouri time for the Monday night program, which will be broadcast on Tuesday afternoon. And I very much appreciate having you. So continue to join me on damradio.com, and I invite you to come to International Flavor English on my YouTube channel, and hopefully you'll join me there. And you can also type in internationalflavor.com, and that'll take you all to my past podcasts. Please join me again tomorrow. I very much am looking forward to having this program work that way. And I, intend to go live with all this. If you log in and you check out my screen, and I will show it to you even now, what my screen looks like on International Flavor English. I will put this out. I am I'm excited for this. I think it will work out a little bit better, and people can be added to the screen. You could be my video guest, just like you could be my audio guest, and you can come in either way, or you can type in commentary, and that commentary will show up live. I also encourage you to use my email, which is samuelt@internationalflavor.com, and you can send me emails to there with show input, with ideas, with requests, with further information. Or if you get on and file your commentary, you don't have to be on, but there's a link below where you can log in on your computer, on your telephone, on your tablet, and you can join in video on the camera and be live on the feed. And you guys have stayed with me through my horror stories of technological issues, and I hope those do not continue. But I believe we'll be able to get all of this resolved, and that everything will be well set for us to engage and to transmit everywhere and be able to listen. I'm excited for this concept. So please join me. Meantime, I'd like to get some further people to pay attention to what is going on in Ukraine. And maybe, JR and company, they all like to talk about how it would be nice to get rid of a lot of the Missouri laws and things like that. I have one thing that I'd like to get rid of this year. I would truly like Trump to stop funding this war and to stop all efforts to get it there. And if something comes to his desk, don't sign it. If people want to continue, I hope he is not led astray by these people who are very intent upon continuing U.S. war. And I just don't like it. So I hope that we can, if anybody wants to comment on those particular areas, I'd be happy to chat with you on my show this evening at 9 o'clock. Join me and we will continue. Join us tomorrow. You can always check the Damn Radio schedule at damradio.com/schedule. And Monday's a big day, and Jack's car show starts at 7. And let's all have a good listen to that. And tune in tomorrow, same time, same bat channel until I change it. You all have a good evening, and thanks for joining along.